name's Dan Martin and I'm the Managing Director of Broadbean Technology. Firstly, wanted to tell off Richard because he did promise me that he was going to make some either major faux pas or fall off on the stage or do something to make me look a little bit better in my presentation. So you owe me a beer. What I wanted to talk to you all about today, that there's not a single person in this room that isn't in some form engaged in digital recruitment. We're all either acting as principal in digital recruitment or we use it on a daily, regular basis to find talent, to find the people that we're looking to fill the roles that we're looking for. I don't think, from my perspective, there's any market segment in the wider economy that is prone to so much flux and change as the digital recruitment market. The stuff that Rich has just been talking about, if you dial back 5 years ago, very little of that was available, very little of that was relevant to the way that we all went about our jobs. You see a sea change in technology and a sea change in channels on an annual, biannual basis, and I think we're in a pretty unique place in this market in that regard. So what I wanted to talk about was, from our position in the market, some of the trends that we see impacting the recruitment marketing digital marketplace, and then start to explore some of the ramifications of those changes, some of the ramifications of those trends in terms of how we all then conduct our day-to-day work. And I wanted just to then start to talk about some of the hints and tips that we would recommend you use when engaging with tools like LinkedIn, when engaging with other social media platforms that are now available to you. In order to provide some context, and I don't know who in this room knows too much about Broadbean, so to provide a bit of context to the talk that I'm about to give, I just wanted to give a really quick 1-minute overview of who we are and what we do. We are the global leader, we like to talk of ourselves as the global leader, in job advert distribution and wider candidate sourcing technology. Any new channel that emerges, any new technology that's available to you, we will endeavour to provide enabling technology to help you use it in a more efficient manner, to help you use it in an aggregated way with the other tools and the other channels that you use. We've now got over 35,000 users in 65 countries around the world. We have offices now in London, in California, in Sydney, in Frankfurt, in Paris and in Amsterdam. And we actually count amongst our clients, as well as many of the world's leading corporate clients, over 75% of the top 250 recruitment agencies in the UK. We post over 60% of all job adverts that are posted online in the UK in any given month originate in our system. What that means is, in terms of responses that we track back, we see around 4 million candidate responses, all source tracked, every single month. So we have pretty good visibility about which channels work and which channels don't. And in our newer areas of wider candidate sourcing, we now see in excess of 1 million candidate searches, so CV database searches, LinkedIn searches, wider web searches every single month, all carried out from within our system. So we like to think that that gives us a pretty unique view about some of the things that are happening in the recruitment marketing marketplace, some of the key trends and key themes. And I wanted to look at two particular prevailing wisdoms, if you like, that I often hear talked about in and around, on the one hand, the impending death or decline of the job board, and then on the other hand, the inexorable and clearly linked rise of social media and professional media as an alternative to job boards for recruitment. Because of our legacy background as a multi-posting business, we have a really strong presence in the posting adverts to job boards. So any small change, any small decline in the usage of job boards, we see pretty early. We see it probably before the job boards see it themselves, because we see it at an aggregated level. And for me, this is a myth. I'm not saying that one day the job boards won't start to suffer as other technologies become more prevalent. But what I am saying is I can't see a time in the near future where they won't play an active part in all of our strategies. People talk about wanting to replace job boards, but there are very few people that have really done it and really made a success of taking them out of the mix completely. From a Broadbean perspective, this is a graph that just shows the trend in adverts that we post on a monthly basis out to the job boards. There was a definite decline in 2008, 2009, but that was economy, that wasn't job board performance. And since that point, from the beginning of 2010, there's been a constant and consistent increase in the volumes of job adverts that we're posting to the major job boards. Again, this is an aggregated level, and we post around 200 to 220,000 unique jobs every single month, which when aggregated up by the number of job boards we post to gets us into the millions. But we're seeing that trend continue, and we're seeing that trend continue even in a continuing difficult economic environment. Adverts is one thing, candidate response obviously is a completely different. But there again, we're seeing a growth in response rates and a growth in absolute responses that mirrors and actually exceeds the number of adverts that are being posted to those job sites. If you want active candidates, LinkedIn is doing a great job at turning a passive candidate base into an increasingly active one. But right now, if you want active candidates, you can certainly get a very high volume of those from the major job boards. And we saw in January of last year over 4 million responses in 1 month for the first time, and you can see that the number is hovering around that 4 million mark on a regular basis. So we don't see it. We don't see a dip in performance when you look at the job boards. We're a multi-posting system at our heart. As part of that, people use us to post to multiple channels. So this probably isn't a completely fair representation of the market as a whole. But what we see over time is people are posting to more job boards, not less. And if I took from our client base, if I looked at the corporate clients amongst our client base, and again, they number some of the biggest companies in the world, this curve would be steeper than the curve that I'm showing on the graph behind me. People are getting cleverer in how they use job boards. People are using aggregation sites, which we would broadly lump in with the job boards, in a much more proactive way. They're using niche boards in a much more proactive way. So again, the trend in terms of absolute usage of boards is ticking up. It's not ticking down. So we think that, and I've given this presentation to a group of job boards on a couple of occasions recently, and they're always quite relieved to see the upward nature of these curves. But we don't see any impending replacement of the boards as a key part of the overall advertising mix. So if that previous assertion, in my view, is a bit of a fallacy, is the rise of social media and professional media as a substitution for job boards also a fallacy, also a myth? And I have to say this time, I think that there is a lot of truth in what is being said. Social media is absolutely a channel that people are starting to engage with in a much more comprehensive and engaged manner. From the candidate perspective, the numbers are unbelievable. 18 million Americans claim that they got their last job from Facebook. 18 million people. 10 million claim to have got their last job from LinkedIn. That's probably a bit less of a surprise. And 8 million claim to have found their last job on Twitter. So from the candidate side, they certainly seem to be believing that social media has a part to play. In terms of the corporate recruitment market, again, people seem to be buying into it as a channel. 90% of people at the start of 2012 claimed that social media would play a key part in their recruitment strategy this year. And 65% claimed they'd already made hires from social media. And specifically, this doesn't include LinkedIn. And if you threw LinkedIn into this mix, as you saw when you all raised your hands earlier, the numbers would be even higher still. So the hype is there, and the hype seems pretty clear. But again, we have some data that we've examined to try and give some context and content to those claims. What I did was I took a point in time over the last 3 years so that we could compare like for like on a monthly basis, and looked at what the volumes were of people posting jobs to Facebook, to Twitter, and I've included Indeed on here just because I think there's an interesting trend emerging there as well, and compared that to the trends that we're seeing in the world of the major job boards, the Total Jobs, JobSite and Monster being the 3 largest job boards in our network in the UK. In 2009, unsurprisingly, Twitter was maybe making a little bit of an emergence. Facebook was nowhere. Indeed was making very tentative steps into the UK. By 2010, you'd seen a real change. Twitter suddenly was up there as one of our leading destinations to post jobs to, and Facebook was starting to appear on the radar on a regular basis. And this matched to conversations we were having with people when they were asking us, how do you post to Facebook? How do we get value from Facebook? So you started seeing some real noise and some real evolution during 2010. The really amazing numbers though were 2011. So again, this is December versus December versus December. In December 2011, by a country mile, the largest destinations for us to post jobs to were Twitter and Facebook in that order. And if you just look at the graph above it, the change from 2009 to 2011 is startling. And we were really surprised when we saw this. And this chart does the job boards a real disservice because it makes it look like they're not performing. But actually, the scale is just off the scale has just changed dramatically. The job boards haven't shrunk, but social media has genuinely become an alternative posting channel for people to look to hire talent. I then updated it for our latest stats for July, and we've seen a couple of interesting things there actually. The first is when comparing July with December, the job boards actually increased by 40%. These three key job boards increased by 40%. July is a higher volume month than December, always is, so that's probably not that surprising. Twitter and Facebook only increased by 10%.
Zoom.
So what had seemed like an sort of inexorable growth seems to have tailed off a little bit when you look at the two things side by side. The other thing that struck me as being particularly interesting here is the trend in Indeed. Indeed is now by some distance the highest trafficked recruitment site in the UK. And in terms of volumes of jobs being posted through our system, it's also now the single biggest channel. And interestingly, in 6 months, the increase is 100%. So they've gone from just over 40,000 to just over 80,000 ads posted every single month through Broadbean. This clearly isn't comparing apples with apples because it's free to post jobs to Facebook, it's free to post jobs to Twitter. I'm sure everyone in this room thinks it's far too expensive to post your jobs on Total Jobs, on JobSite and on Monster. So it's not like for like. So we then just delved into the data a little bit more and looked at the response volumes that we see for the same kind of period. And again, this really surprised me. If you look at just the 1 year, and the 1 year when most of the growth was happening, the amount of responses, and I've indexed this deliberately so as not to give you the absolute numbers, the growth in response volumes from Facebook during the course of the year was 11 times. And again, that's January to December, high month to low month. So actually the factor is probably more like 15 times. Twitter was maybe not quite as dramatic, but was 6 times more responses in December than we received in January. We've updated this for the first part of 2012, and again it's quite interesting. What had seemed like an inexorable, unwavering growth has just sort of tailed off a little bit. And we don't actually have an answer as to why this is happening, why that growth hasn't continued on in the last 6 months. But our assertion at the moment is that 2011 was all about everybody getting everything out onto social media. It was a fad a little bit. People felt they had to post their jobs to Facebook. They had to post the jobs to Twitter. And the response just followed the volume of ads. In the first half of 2012, I think people are being a bit more discerning about what they post onto social media. And the people that were getting nothing from it have probably stopped using it in the same volume that they were before. And again, responses have tailed off accordingly. But again, the interesting curve on there for me is Indeed. So anyone that isn't thinking about Indeed and isn't factoring it into their mix, I think probably needs to start thinking about it a little bit more closely. So those are some of the trends that we see happening in the market. So what does all of that mean for the direct recruiter? What does it mean for you guys? For me, on the one hand, it's quite an interesting. There's quite an interesting conundrum for me here. On the one hand, there's never been so much data and so much information about, relevant information and data about people you might want to hire out in the marketplace. That's a good thing. There's opportunity there for you. On the other hand, the mix of channels that you need to be experts in, the mix of channels you need to be engaging with, it's becoming more fragmented, not less. It's becoming more complicated, not less. And I see that as a real kind of conundrum for people. On the one hand, rightly, you want to engage with the channels that are available to you. On the other hand, what you don't want to do is become spread so thinly that you just don't do anything properly. So what I wanted just to come on to a little bit was talk about some of the social media channels that we think you can get more from than you probably are at the moment. The first one of those is Facebook. There probably isn't anybody here whose company isn't in some form represented on Facebook, will have a company Facebook page of some kind. The more forward-thinking of you will probably have Facebook career pages. You'll have information about working for your company. You'll have a stream of the jobs that you have live at any one time. But it's a very rare company for me that would honestly be able to look at their Facebook page and say they're doing it justice. Again, for me, a lot of the last year and a half has been about ticking a box. It's been about putting something on Facebook because you need to put something on Facebook. But the opportunities are enormous because millions of people, not only are they accessing Facebook on a daily basis, there are millions of people a lot younger than me and a lot younger than most of us who do everything within Facebook. I was actually chatting to my uncle's step-uncle's daughter. Step-uncle? No, uncle-in-law's daughter. No, that's sister-in-law. Ignore my lack of ability to think what my family member was. But this girl was 17 years old. She doesn't have email. She doesn't have an email account anywhere. Her sole online communication tool is Facebook. Everyone messages in Facebook. They do everything in Facebook. So if people are engaging, doing all of their online engagement in that environment, you've got to be in there and you've got to do yourself justice. So I've pulled together a few do's and don'ts, and I'm not going to go through all of these because I actually think they're fairly obvious. And I think, to me, the key is to sit back and look at what you're doing and ask yourself about whether it's appropriate or not. Are you engaging in that environment in the right manner or not? And I think for me that there's a few key things that we should all be trying to do. One is understand the medium and engage according to the medium. So that Facebook needs to be interactive. You need to be engaging with it regularly. You need to be putting fresh content on. You need to be putting interesting content on. And you need to be allowing people to engage with that content, to comment on it, and engage with them when they comment on it. You need to be engaging with it in a human manner. The style with which you engage in Facebook isn't the same style that you'd engage on LinkedIn or on any other channel. It's different, it's more relaxed, it's more social. And I think you need to think about that and the kind of content that goes on. And the other thing I wanted to look at was, how are you getting people onto your Facebook page? Because if you're not putting good content on and you're not making it fresh, then people aren't going to go onto the site. But even if you do that, okay, yes, there's the virality of likes and all of those things, but you need to think about if you want it to become a genuine channel to recruit from, get people onto the site. And I don't know how many people have actually sat there with the equivalent of Facebook's equivalent of Google's PPC and built a campaign. I actually did one on Friday evening just for the fun of it, and it's really interesting. You can be very, very targeted in the way you advertise, and you've got complete control over the way you spend your money. So if you've got ads that you're struggling to fill, you've got roles you're struggling to fill, then drive people to your Facebook page with relevant content through the tools that they provide and see whether it does anything for you. I'd lay money on the fact that you'll start to see results in a way that you're not at the moment. The don'ts are equally obvious and mainly the opposite to the do's. But my one point there would be, don't assume that posting a job to Facebook means you've got a Facebook strategy, because you haven't. You know, you're ticking a box. You're not doing anything other than ticking a box, and you're one of the people that's probably not going to be posting to it in 6 months' time because it's doing nothing for you. Twitter again is interesting. The volumes were very high, as you saw. If I hadn't indexed the chart in terms of responses, what you'd have actually seen is that Twitter delivers far more responses than Facebook right now. People are actually following brands like yours, strong corporate brands, on Twitter. People are following individual role types that they're interested in and content that they're interested in. And if a job ticks that box, then people are actually clicking on that and applying for that job. Again, there was a comment raised earlier, which was you shouldn't just put out a stream of job adverts in your Twitter feed, because that's not going to be effective. But if you can put relevant content, the same kind of content in a different style that you're probably putting out on Facebook to a certain extent, and then interspersed amongst that interesting jobs that you're looking to fill, it will yield results, and it is interesting. One of the other assets that I think you have as direct employers that the recruitment agencies don't have, for example, is your employee base. Social media does quite an interesting thing to your employee base, in my opinion. You can create a talent pool out of your employees multiplied by 2, 3, 4, 500 people that they all have in their social networks. We actually have a tool which is up on screen at the moment, but there are lots of others out there in the market that basically, through clever matching technology, turn your employees' networks into a talent pool. It leaves control of those social networks to your employees, so you don't have to worry about recruiters abusing your employees' social networks. Control resides with them, but you turn what's always been probably the most effective hiring methodology into one that can really deliver volume. And I think, again, as corporate employers, you've got an opportunity there that isn't available to recruitment agencies and other non-branded organisations. And the final thing really for me off the back of all of this is source tracking is everything. Because although all of the channels that we've talked about in the last part of this talk are free to post to, they're not free. If you've got 1 or 2 or 3 people whose jobs it is to make sure you've got relevant, up-to-date, interesting content on Facebook, then that's costing you money. If you've got one person whose job it is to make sure that they're monitoring Twitter and posting the relevant content to Twitter, then it's not free. If you buy our employee referral product, it's definitely not free. And you've got to make sure you're tracking just as religiously as you would the job boards what you're spending on those channels and how effective they are. And again, most people that we talk to don't do that. They know that they get some response from social media, but they don't really understand. How effective it really is, and they certainly don't understand ROI in the context of social media. And then just to finalise, for me, as corporate recruiters, you've got massive advantages in this new world. You've got a brand that most recruitment agencies don't have. You've got expertise and content that people are interested in that most recruitment agencies don't have. You've got data, a huge amount of data that you're not properly using to better tailor your recruitment activity. It's all available to you, it's all usable, and it's a real advantage that you have. And then if you can leverage your employees at the same time and make them, core pillar of your recruitment strategy, all the better. I think you'll yield fantastic results.